live bait versus artificial lures. Both are used by anglers all across the world to catch fish in both freshwater and saltwater, but which one is better? And is using live bait cheating? In this video, I'm gonna break down everything you should be keeping in mind when selecting one versus the other. I'm gonna ask a few questions to a live bait fishing expert, all so that you can be more educated which one is right for you, live bait or artificials. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all.
I can't believe what I just caught.
Yes! Now, the first thing I want to address before we get deep into the differences between live bait like nightcrawlers and artificial lures is answering the question, is using live bait cheating? And the answer, at least in my opinion, no. You know, if you were to ask me that question 10 years ago, I would probably answer totally different because I was an arrogant young bass fisherman, had never caught any other species really, and so my understanding of how fishing worked across the board was very little. But now that I've caught a ton of species across the country, I've met and interacted with lots of different kinds of anglers, I can confidently say that using live bait is not cheating because for the majority of us out there, fishing is all about having fun, making memories, catching fish, and maybe bringing some home to mama for her to cook. And so if using live bait helps you do that better, then by all means, it's not cheating. But one thing that may be cheating is how easy to cook and how delicious Factor 75 meals are.
See, if you find yourself struggling to find time to make and eat good food, we probably resort to junk fast food, right? But if the fish that I'm trying to catch probably prefer something juicy and delicious like a live minnow, why would I not choose the same for myself? And that's why I've got to tell you guys about Factor meals. When you order, they are shipped directly to your front door in a refrigerated package. All you've got to do is pop it in the microwave for 2 minutes and you have a juicy, delicious, fresh meal. They not only taste fantastic, but they can help you stay on track with your calorie goals or eating plans with their many dietary options like keto, calorie smart, and protein plus. I like protein plus. And here's where I've got to be real with you guys. Most microwave meals that I've tried are absolutely horrendous. This here, the jalapeno lime cheddar chicken meal, is the most tender chicken I've ever had in a microwave meal. It's delicious. And my wife Hannah's already told me she loves the fact they have cold pressed juices with very select good ingredients. So if you want to try Factor meals for yourself, I would highly recommend it, and I will have a link down in the video description as well as in the top of the comment section. You can use code TRF50 for 50% off your first order. Again, that is TRF50 for half off your entire first Factor meals order. Now, using these meals may be the key, may be the answer to getting good food fast.
But that doesn't mean that using live bait will help you catch fish faster. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's the exact opposite, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But I really think if you were to go on the street and ask people that maybe have never caught a fish in their entire lives, which one is better to catch fish? The live thing, or the fake worms, the fake crankbaits, things that are not alive, they'd probably answer live bait. And to be honest, I don't blame them. But that's not always the case. Live bait is not always better, and let's break it down, starting with point number one. Now, the first point I want to make is in comparing the logistics between live bait and artificials because it's a little different. Live bait, as its name implies, consists of some form of an alive creature. The most commonly used in freshwater being worms or nightcrawlers, small minnows or chubs, shiners or larger baitfish, and leeches. And the most common live bait in saltwater are baitfish like mullet, pinfish or croakers, crabs, shrimp, and squid, and there's really a ton more in saltwater than there even are in freshwater. And because this bait is actually alive, it's up to you as the angler to keep it alive. So if you don't have some live well or bait well or the box the worms come in to keep them alive throughout the fishing day, it is inevitable that you're going to lose some of your bait throughout the day, which is going to cost you money, and potentially, if you run out, it's going to be time to go home. And this problem makes bank fishing very challenging with live bait because if you're trying to move all around your pond, around the river, and you don't have a good way to transport and keep alive your bait, it's going to end up dying and you're going to end up having to go home. And so if you are a bank fisherman, live bait might not be for you. I know a lot of you guys have caught them on live bait, but that's why worms are so good for bank fishermen because they come in the box they come in. You can keep your worms alive for a long time here in the box. Artificial lures like soft plastic worms, crankbaits, topwaters, of course, they're not alive, at least to my knowledge. Are y'all alive? You can store them anywhere. You can travel with them and fish all different bodies of water in one day. They're not going to grow tired. They are not going to die. And as long as you don't get snagged, you can catch multiple fish, if not many, many fish on one artificial bait, as opposed to live bait, which is usually one and done. And just the simple logistics of casting and retrieving can be tough on live bait because the more times they hit the water, are retrieved back in, hit the water, retrieved back in, it takes a toll on them, and they will die throughout the day, which is not a problem with artificials. Point number two two I want to make in comparing live bait versus artificial is in the rigging styles between the two. Live bait across the board is generally rigged on some form of octopus or circle hook. It allows for easy, quick rigging and usually a great hookup and landing ratio. For the most part though, with this hook and live bait combination, being weedless is simply not an option. And that presents a huge problem that we're gonna discuss here in a second, but let's talk about the other category real quick. Artificial lures, on the other hand, can be rigged hundreds of different ways with a dozen or so combinations of hooks, sizes, and shapes. Some, like a Texas rig, being weedless, and others, like a crankbait, not quite. But overall, artificial lures sure gets the point for being diverse in the way that it can be rigged. Now, point three that I wanna make in the most complex is about the effectiveness of live bait versus artificials, because that's where the biggest discrepancy is. Live bait is extremely effective at catching multiple species of fish from one location. If you wanted to go to your pond, take a nightcrawler, float it underneath a bobber, you might catch every species of fish in that pond. So bass, crappie, bluegill, sunfish, carp, catfish, everything in a pond can bite a worm on a bobber or a worm on the bottom. As long as it can fit the tiny circle hook used on a nightcrawler in its mouth, you can catch it. Artificial lures, though, thrown in the exact same areas, oftentimes just catch one species, and that is bass. Occasionally they can catch a bluegill or a catfish if they happen to swim by, and they can get a bass-sized hook in their mouth, which, especially for smaller sized panfish, smaller crappie, it's not gonna happen very often. So if what you're after is multi-species action, live bait is definitely the play. Live bait is also much more realistic looking because, well, it is real, which in stained to clear water can definitely make an impact on how many bites and catches you get, because this thing just looks better crawling through the water, or a minnow or a chub or a shiner swimming through the water. It just looks more appealing to a fish. So once again, another point goes to live bait. Where live bait is not effective, however, is around cover and structure. Because live bait is rigged in a non-weedless fashion, it's probably not smart to throw your live shiner on a circle hook directly into a lily pad field, or let the leech rigged on a drop shot sink all the way down into a brush pile or a submerged tree. You're probably gonna get snagged on either of those and either lose your live bait and maybe even lose your entire setup. Something easily avoided by using a soft plastic like a weedless Texas rig or shaky head. So if the fish in your body of water are living inside of cover and structure, so sticks, grass, underneath boat docks, it's probably best to learn and become good at throwing and catching fish on artificial lures. Can you still catch fish on live bait around that cover and structure? Absolutely. But if your fish are actually inside that cover and structure, it's probably not best to use a non-weedless live bait. But the last point when comparing the effectiveness of the two, in my opinion, the biggest disparity is between the efficiency and the speed at which you can fish live bait versus artificials. I can make 6 casts in a row in 1 minute with a crankbait, a vibrating jig, a topwater to one bank line, and doing that over and over and over again for a minute, 5 minutes, an hour might wear me out as the angler, but it doesn't wear my lure out because it's a fake lure, it's artificial, it's not alive. But if I was to make those exact same casts over and over and over again, casting, retrieving with any kind of live bait, I don't care if it's worms, shiners, crabs, whatever, you're gonna have live bait die on you because they are not designed to handle that much pressure, that much force, that much hitting the water and retrieving back to you. So if in your body of water, you're trying to cover water, find where the fish are, live bait is probably not the choice for you because you're gonna end up killing all your minnows. But maybe to you, being efficient and fast on the water is not your cup of tea. You go fishing because you like to relax and maybe catch a few fish if they decide to bite. And if that's the case for you, then live bait is definitely the way to go. I would still recommend using artificials and mixing it in with live bait, maybe keeping your live bait in the water and using artificials somewhere else. Because I grew up in the tournament bass side of things, the really hardcore fishing, I can't associate as much with using live bait in a slow manner. I'm probably ADD, who knows? So even though I can't totally understand the love for live bait fishing, at least sitting on the bank doing live bait the entire time, I still understand that you can have a love for it, and it's definitely a great option to catch fish, especially some bluegill and crappie to take home because they're delicious. So now I get the pleasure of talking to a fellow YouTube friend of mine and fishing guide from Tennessee named Caleb, also known as Bass Quest on social media. And he is an expert at using both live bait and artificials on his guide trips, and he's caught some absolutely giant fish on both live bait and artificials, so I thought it'd be a good time to ask him some questions, his professional guiding experience on the difference between live bait and artificials, and I hope this clears up any confusion and gives you guys a good understanding. That way you can make the best decision for your fishing. First question, is using live bait cheating?
I would say it's a different kind of fishing. I wouldn't call it cheating necessarily. You still have to have a skill set for it. I have bass fishermen on the boat all the time that have a ton of trouble. There's a lot that goes into it, but I will say if you're a good fisherman, you put in the time, you know exactly where fish are, and then you put in the work to get the right bait and then keep the bait alive, then it's easy fishing.
Kind of compare the struggles of live bait versus the struggles of artificial, and then the easy parts of live bait and the easy parts of artificial.
So the biggest thing with live bait, especially if you're talking about getting bait like I am, like big gizzard shad and threadfin shad, you can't catch them on rod and reel. You have to use a cast net. And so then I'm constantly, like I spend hundreds of hours scouting bait, just like you're deer hunting or something like that, finding the right size, because again, it's all relative, right? Like I can find shad this long any day of the week, but where can I normally like consistently find those bigger than average shad? That's a huge part of it. But I'd say the biggest thing that'll hold you back on live bait fishing is you can't cover water. Like you need to know right where fish are, or you need to use the current to your advantage or use the wind to your advantage so that when you cast the bait out, you can cover a large area, right? Because if you cast that big shad, especially the bigger they are, if they splat on the water, I mean, you probably get maybe 3 casts with one, and then it's still alive, but it's not the same.
You know, my worm was messed up, so I didn't catch one. Is that the same thing artificial? If your shad is messed up, you don't catch one?
Yes. So I've got live scope now. I'm sure you have live scope as well, but like watching 5 or 6 8+ pound fish just cruising around your bait and just like broing up with it, and like they'll corral it over here and scare it for a second and then just leave it alone and come back and mess with it again.
We're hearing it here first. You can have live scope and live bait and still not catch them.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that's the funny thing too, like the feeding windows. You know, I'm buddies with a lot of the other full-time guides on Chickamauga Lake, and it is hilarious. Like we text each other at the same time, and it's like the whole lake pops off at the same hour. It doesn't matter if you've got live bait or artificial. I've learned so much from doing this live bait thing, like the things that are actually a deal, and bite windows are definitely a deal, and presentation, lineups, you know, those sneaky waypoints that we have on that one cast, that is such a big deal, even with like the most beautiful filet mignon that you've got out there. If the fish are like super aggressive and they're feeding, like if you and I were side by side and the fish were schooling and they were like, you know, just chewing, and you had a spoon and I had shad, you would outfish me every time because you can make more casts, right?
Yeah.
It's just like if you're crappie fishing, like, you know, Pawpaw's got the minnows, but I've got the jig. If they're eating the jig, I'm going to catch more fish than Pawpaw. Okay, that's just the way that works. But here's the caveat to that. If there is an 8, 9, 10, 12 pounder in there, I'm likely to get that bite, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Is like, to me, it's like you've got the fillet. You've got the most beautiful thing out there. And I work really hard to get the right bait and spend a lot of money to keep that bait looking beautiful. I tell my clients, like, if you drop down or you know, you bring your shad back up and you look at it and you don't think every 10 pounder in the lake wants to eat that thing just by looking at it because it's that delicious looking, then throw it out and get another one. And that's what separates someone from catching 4, 5, 6 pounders on live bait and catching consistently 8, 9, 10 pounders. Like you still have to do those things in order to fool those really big fish, because they do inspect the heck out of the bait, dude. It is insane how long they will just like chill and swim and go around this thing until they ambush it the way they want to, and it moves the wrong way and they eat it.
That's awesome. Well, hey, appreciate all the input on live bait. I'm not an expert, but you are, so thanks for hopping on.
Yes, sir.
So now that I've taught you guys a ton about live baits versus artificials, the question still remains, which one is better? And to be honest, there really is no good answer to that, because it all depends on what you as the angler needs. If what you're after is multi-species action and you're fine sitting in one location, you can keep your live bait alive all day, then by all means go with live bait. If you're taking out young kids and you want to just get them on a fish, you don't care what kind of fish it is, go with a live worm underneath a bobber and you're going to catch tons of species, as you saw in this video. But for me, I'm a bass fisherman at heart. Now, does that mean I'm not going to go catch other species on live bait? Of course not. I still enjoy that. But for the most part, my job revolves around me catching bass on camera for you guys, and I'm just super passionate about that. And so I'm not going to throw live bait because artificials are far more versatile. But at the end of the day, like I said, you've got to decide what's best for you, and neither one is truly better than the other. Well, my goodness, folks, hopefully you enjoyed that video. That was a ton of fun for me to make. I usually don't branch out of my comfort zone of the artificial lures very often, so to talk about and ask questions to experts about live bait was super intriguing. Hopefully you learned something. Again, thank you so much to Factory Meals for sponsoring this video. I will have their information down in the video description. And if you want to see a video I made talking about how to rig every single type of soft plastic artificial bait, I will leave that up here in the corner. It is a very helpful video for somebody just getting into fishing artificial baits. My name's Tyler, and we'll see you guys next time right here on TRF.